City Council meeting to order. Please call the roll.
Harris.
Present.
Carlson. Here. Olson.
Here.
Severson.
Here.
West. Here. Zingy. Here.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance. Thank you, everybody. All right. Oh. Hey, Dick. I forgot to get the sign-up sheet. Can you grab that?
Two pages.
Yeah. I'll just blame Alan. Thanks, Steve. Oh my gosh. First of all, we have a public hearing on Resolution 132533, amending the 2013 General Government Annual Budget, Port Department $65,000. Is anybody here to speak to that? Seeing none, we'll close that public hearing, move to communications, which we have some stuff from Mr. Severson. On the rain gauge, we got a memo on the Berth 2-3 site enhancement. Request for a substitute motion on 7-8-10 Centennial Building lighting replacement. We got tons of letters. And that brings us down to persons to be heard. We got a whole bunch of signees, which I'm great. So if you can keep your messages to the point so we can get everybody in, it would be wonderful. And I thank you all for coming. Dave, start us off. Mr. Rubin.
Dave Rubin, 510 Edmonds Street. Council, Your Honor, happy holidays.
Yo.
I stand here as a beneficiary of the council's benevolence and good judgment, I hope they feel, and the wisdom and the decision they made to fund, the rock. This is the same process for the rain gauge. Same exact process. I feel you guys are in a very, very difficult position tonight, especially because in my case, CPB money came to the rescue because I had no understanding of what I was doing, and I underbid it with the city's money, and luckily the borough came through with CPB money. Now we're, that was 2008, 2007. Now we're here, and did we all just assume that it was CPB money funding this project? Money that is legally bound to be spent on dock enhancement and enhancing the tourist experience. The state statute starts off to help mitigate the impact of the cruise line industry on the sleepy little fishing village of Ketchikan, and it ends with enhancing the tourist experience. So CPB money, we assume that. Then you guys did, we did, as the public, but the Arts Council and KPAW. Then last week, all of a sudden, no. It's being funded for the Port Enterprise Fund. And then we went and talked to Councilman Zingy about that today, and she was just as confused. Yeah, we understood it was. Then I went down to Safeway, and I ran into Mayor Williams. He said, well, yeah, of course it's being funded by CPB money. It always was. I said, well, what about what Steve said? He goes, I don't know what he said. I said, it was in the article. You guys are in a tough position because, as Judy said, Councilman Zingy, she based her decisions on an understanding of, funding that was in place. And she feels like, wait a minute, what's going on? That's what I would like to encourage you to postpone this until everybody has a better understanding of what's going on here. I mean, there's so many conflicts, like should have had a local artist doing it. Well, who's building the dock down there? Who built the Visitors Bureau? It's not local. Because locally, I discovered from the cruise down there, locally the bids were way too high. Maybe we have the expertise, but we're in a, we're drawing from a worldwide, pool, and we should. And in this case, we sent out RFPs around the world. We're lucky enough to have artists here that have their work all over the world. That brings pride to Ketchikan. But we should open up. We import an economy every summer because locally we don't have an economy to keep us going. We have to import an economy. Just like, you know, okay, these guys weren't local, but that money comes from the tourists, the CPV money. Because, I mean, Mayor Williams also pointed out, well, and Mr. Amelon pointed out in the article, well, the council can decide to use CPV money. So that is still in place, as I understand. I hope I understand. But, so that's money from the tourists. It's money that doesn't even come from here. It's not taxpayer money. It's cruise line industry money, and we're drawing on the global, you know, the world, the globe, to bring those people here, to import an economy. So I think we have to get beyond that, well, they're not local thing. You know, I think it's just, we shouldn't do that. I just think you guys should just postpone this so everybody really understands, you know, what they're basing their decisions on. You know, in this case, you know, the funding, I think that's pretty important. You know, and the piece, you know, art's a matter of how it looks. When I first saw it, I said, what the heck is that? Which I expect, you know, that's what tourists are going to do. But then when they're going to walk up and see, what is this? And like I discovered that, oh, I see, 7 days, the bulbs, and they each empty into a month. There's 12 of those. And then on New Year's Eve, they all empty it into the big thing, and people could buy tickets like in Nanana. That was Mr. Wanzer's idea. You could buy tickets of how much water fell in the year. It's not what we all pictured as art. I mean, I stood before you and said, look, my idea is conventional art. It's conservative, conventional, old-time art. This isn't. And I like to see, you know, giant statues and stuff. And this, like, what is this? And then when I understood it, I all of a sudden realized that could be really cool. So anyway, I think you should just postpone it until January, which you're going to, I mean, Kathleen, and the work that was done. This is one folder. Each member of the selection committee got one of this. This is all the resumes of all the applicants. They put in an incredible amount of work. We had to review these all. We had to go home and go on the computer and look up all their sites and everything. Then we had to go to spend a whole day there looking at the pieces for the first time. It was a very public process because people that were represented there were from all strata of Ketchikan's population. I mean, it couldn't have been any more. And like I said, all the other art that's been funded, it's been a successful project. Nothing happened in secret. It's a process that you guys have approved and are fully aware of, you know, because all these, you know, it was done in secret. It was not done in secret, you know. So anyway, that's all I want to say.
Thanks, Dave.
You're welcome.
Tom Henderson. Where are you? Welcome, Tom.
Fortunately, there's auxiliary seating tonight. So, thank you. I'm Tom Henderson, representing Oceans, Alaska. Barbara Morgan couldn't be here with you again for a third night in a row, so she asked me just to stop in and say a very short piece requesting additional funding for Oceans, Alaska. You know, I know that we're all looking at budget shortfalls, the city, the state, federal government. We're all looking at budget shortfalls. If the state starts cutting back, we're going to see people looking for jobs. We're going to see layoffs. We're going to see, an effect throughout the economy. And I don't think there's any time like the present time to start looking down the road and either decide you're going to back off and hide your head or step up and do something about the future. And I think this is an opportunity at the city, and the borough's already taken the opportunity to step forward and, you know, make at least a small contribution toward a better future for this region. You know, we're not going to see a huge mariculture economy develop in the next 5 years, but in the next 50 years, your kids or grandkids could see an economy based on aquaculture similar to what we have based on salmon in this area right now. Think what that would mean to the local economy. Now, we may not be here to see it, but it's not unrealistic to expect that sort of an economic development. We have to take the step somewhere. As you know, the borough came up with some money for us for some operations funds. I worked it out over a period of 2 years, and it's just about break even. Well, just about break even. It actually showed a $40,000 credit at the end of 2 years. Well, you know, as well as I know, $40,000 credit will more than likely be a $40,000 deficit by the time we get 2 years down the road. So I think it's going to be real important that we come up with additional funding to get us through those 2 years, and hopefully see a new facility built at the end of those 2 years, so that we can not only maintain what shellfish industry we have, but build it, and build it out tremendously. If it doesn't happen, if you know, we are in a real precarious situation. If we don't survive for the next couple of years, it won't be the end of the shellfish industry in Alaska, but it won't grow any more than it has. There cannot be any gooey ducks imported into Alaska. I've already been contacted by another group asking about setting up a shellfish hatchery elsewhere if we don't keep on keeping on and manage to produce seed here. So other small groups may decide to go forward on their own, and it'll only be small areas, probably located in Sitka, serving a very small group of growers there. So as far as my job goes, you know, one way or the other, it doesn't really matter. I'll always go back to salmon hatcheries or something else. But I think it does have a real positive impact for this area, and I hope you'll give it some real serious consideration. And I thank you for your time.
We got a question.
Could you remind me what amount you were asking?
$48,000 a year for 2 years.
48,000 for how many years?
2 years.
Any other questions for Tom? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mary Ida, come on up. Take your time.
Mayor, Council, I'm here representing the Tongass Historical Society. I'd like to pass some visuals around. So you get some idea of what I'm talking about. Mary Henriksen, 10837 North Tongass Highway, Ketchikan. I'm here representing the Tongass Historical Society to address the museum's leaky roof, lack of standard lighting needed for our collections, and the dangerous condition of original and therefore 50-year-old lighting. The museum and society have dreams of a museum that would be actively engaged with the community, potentially producing even more revenue with a proper venue to show the world-class collections. The present staff is young, energetic, highly qualified, and eager to present an even more exemplary destination for visitors and locals. That's atmospheric. In that we are extremely fortunate to have such an amazing staff. The Society is committed to seeing renovations to the whole building done in the very near future. But this evening, I want to thank the city staff for including these repairs, the roof and the lighting, in the budget, and we hope the council will support these repairs. And once these repairs are done, the museum and exhibit space can be expanded, which allows for more use of the facility and even accommodating more visitors. This will make the space safe for the staff, the collection, and patrons coming to visit the museum. I am joined by others in attendance in thanking you, and I would like the board to please stand and show their support for this small letter.
Thanks for coming.
And that's all I have to say, and if there are any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Any questions for Mary? Thank you for coming, Mary.
You bet.
Next, Steve LaCroix. Is there a Steve here? Going once. All right. Seeing no Steve. Dick, you're on. Mr. Allen.
Kind of warm in here. Council members, Mr. Mayor, my name is Dick Allen. I live at 411 Mission Street. And I was kind of interested in what Ruben just said a little while ago. When they were presenting their rain gauge, I came up for your meeting that night just out of curiosity, because I didn't have a clue what this thing looked like or what they were talking about. I was thinking that he had some kind of little gadgets going this way and that way and dumping. And I kind of, like, was waiting to see, and I thought they'd have it earlier, but they didn't. They had it during the course of the meeting. And the people that was pushing on it, it sounded like, well, hell, we're going to have a second coming of Christ here, crying out loud, the way they're going on. Well, to me, I'm a religious man. To me, that whole thing ended up like a Ford Edsel. It was the Councilman Severson is saying didn't do a thing for him. Well, I really can't say what it did for me, but that's I think that was a real problem from the get-go. As I sat here and waited and saw that thing, the next day I started asking people that I knew. And that means when I went to the post office, I went to the library, went to the market, everywhere. And I had quite a few answers, and none of them was in support of that rain gauge. Now, personally, I don't see it as anything that's historical about this place. And I'm definitely not an art critic. But the whole process, and Councilman Severson last on the meeting tonight, he said there's used to options. Well, I believe if there had been a picture in the paper like there was the following day, not the day before, but the following day, there would have been more public output to the council members. So I think that was done more or less in a secret type atmosphere. Whether it was intended or not, I don't know. I rather doubt it, but that's the way it came about. And the people that I've talked to, as I said, what's wrong with the one we've got? Put a face on the backside so you can see it both ways. I can't see going $100,000, especially when wherever it comes from. And you can't use this CPB money for a cash credit card or, ATM machine. And with that, I would hope next time that you have something like this, that you put it out to the public so they could see and be able to talk with their council members. And I hope that you all reconsider and do not approve of this contract. Thank you.
Thanks, Dick. Any questions for Dick? Thank you, sir. Next, Ray Hendricks.
Hi, Ray Hendricks, 323 Madison. I've been here a year or two. In the summer, I drive tour bus, and I enjoy the people asking me if that rain gauge is really correct. Do we really have 13 plus feet of rain a year? And I enjoy telling them yes, when I've got my rubber boots on especially. And I don't see anything wrong with that rain gauge. One of the reasons for changing, I understand, is because we've got to hide the pipe. Well, yeah, you could put another piece on the back to hide it. You could put a rain bird up on top to hide it. But at least that one is something that we see here all the time. The proposed rain gauge is not going to hide that pipe, and it's nothing to do like nothing like anything we've ever had around here before, with all due respect to the people that spend all their time bringing that up. But something like that the whole town is going to have to look at for many, many years should have been put in the paper so that we could all look at it and say yes or no. I realize you folks were all elected to serve us, but that doesn't mean we like to have you service us. I would like the council to rethink and maybe say, let's not spend $100,000 on that. Let's leave what we got down there. Thank you.
Thanks, Ray. Any questions for Ray? Thank you, sir. All right, that brings us to Kathleen Light.
Hello, I'm Kathleen Light. I'm the director of the Arts Council. I live at 410 Cedar. First of all, just real quickly, I want to thank those of you that joined us at the Winter Arts Fair this past weekend. It was a great fair. We had about 3,000 people come through the door. We had 80 vendors. Included in those vendors were small artist businesses and other nonprofits and school groups that were raising money for their causes. So it was a great weekend, and we're really happy. It was very successful. This Friday, tomorrow night from 5 to 8 is the Winter Art Walk. The Winter Art Walk stretches all the way from the Plaza Mall all the way to Chinook and Company, with arts business and other businesses open late, so folks can do their winter shopping and have a nice evening out. So I hope to see all of you out tomorrow night from 5 to 8. On to the next. I want to thank all of you sincerely for the previous support of public art in our community. Using the KPA process that selected the rain gauge, the same process that selected Dave's Rock on the dock right here, the public art in the library, the Yaltatsi salmon, we've been able to find some excellent art pieces for our community. For this particular piece, this will be the fourth time this funding's come up to this body. The first time was for the budget about a year ago, for the budget for 2013. The second time was in April to approve the process, where you all and the public were able to see the request for proposals and the process that we were going to use. And then again, just a couple weeks ago in November. I'm not sure, this is the same process we've used before. We haven't had a problem with the public wanting to be able to see everything in advance. We've always brought it to you first. It's your funding source, so we've brought it to you respectfully first. And that's what we were asked to do, and that's what we've done. I'm not sure if you've been able to, you guys have been sort of busy. I'm not sure if you've been able to look in your packets for tonight. We had submitted a request to the council to be able to have a public meeting on December 12th to answer questions. And this meeting was suggested to us actually by a couple of council members after we had a discussion with them, Councilmember Zingy and Councilmember Harris. We appreciate their time they took with us to discuss the rain gauge project and to suggest to us to have an open meeting. We would love it if you would suspend your decision until January, like you said you would, and let us have this meeting on December 12th so that we can answer questions like Mr. Allen's and this other gentleman's, and we can clear up any misunderstandings that they may have about this piece of artwork. We would like to have that meeting from 7 in the morning to 6 at night so everybody can come. We will be there all day long with coffee and cookies. But we would like to ask you to just suspend this decision until January. We also would respectfully request to have a clarification of the funding source so that we can be truthful and we can speak the truth when we talk to people about where the funding would come from and what its uses are. That's
Any
it.
questions for Kathleen? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chuck, Mr. Slagle, you're next.
Hello, I'm Chuck Slagle, number 3 Salmon Landing, and I want to thank everybody for taking time. I met with a lot of you individually, and it was must be an enormous amount of time everybody spends that's on the council listening to the different sides of a particular project. I haven't spoken here for a long time, so I'll probably take 5 minutes or so. I got lots of people behind, but I'll make it as quick as I can. I'm for the rain gauge, and there's 3 reasons why I'm for it. You've probably heard these from me individually. I was quite passionate about it over the last week, but number 1, I think it's good for my business, and I think it's good for this town, the concept of art and what's been going on with the art. I also liked the process. I watched it since KPA was started. I was on the committee on the first setting, and I have paid attention to it ever since, and I was proud and honored that so many people, and my neighbors, gave time to it. And thirdly, I started off wondering what the hell that thing was they were submitting, and after I did my research, I became a fan of that particular piece for what I thought it would do for town. So from a first standpoint, we have a town that gets 1 million passengers a year. It's not a right we have. It's something we've earned. Some of it by luck. We're in the middle of 17 million acres of wilderness. We have a town that's 110, 120 years old that's still got a lot of its old structures. You can walk all the way through it. We've got a very entrepreneurial town. Shore excursion manager told me 4 or 5 years ago that Ketchikan produced more shore excursion proposals than any other place in the world. In other words, it is a business town. And for those reasons, plus some vision on part of the council as far as putting enough dock space in and the services in so that the cruise ships wanted to come, the combination of all those things has made us a destination, and that can't just be taken for granted. I mean, Sitka, I had a business out of Sitka, a flying business in the mid-'90s. It had 200,000 people going there. They're down to 60,000. It was a big hudoo. You probably remember this a few years ago when Rupert was going to become a cruise ship port. They never pulled it off. Sitka has a lot going for it. It's just as pretty as Ketchikan. I know that's sacrilegious, but a lot of people would say that. And they have a lot going for it, a lot they can do, but they didn't put it together, and they've lost the cruise ships. Prince Rupert never put it together. In other words, he had spent millions of dollars in infrastructure, never put it together. So we have a combination of things that have made it work, and the art's a big part of it. In other words, when you take a look at the passenger ratings coming in, art is a big part of our town, and it's going to change dramatically over the next 2 or 3 years when people start exploring their destinations on their own. 3 years from now, 5 years from now, at some point, a good portion of the people are going to get off the cruise ships, and they're going to take their tablet, they're going to take their smartphone, they're going to explore the town. And it's incumbent on us to set the course for that so there's some continuity and we take full advantage of that, because there's not many towns around where you can walk around and do that. I mean, we have a dynamic here that allows us to excel at that. But art's a critical part of it. And KPAW started in 2006, 2007, and what is it now? 6 years later, it took to create all these wonderful art pieces, but still not a lot of art. It was involved in the library, produced all that beautiful art in the library. It was involved in the rock, produced the rock, it produced the salmon. So over 6 years, that's all we produced, because to do it right, it takes time. So you methodically got to work through something, not something you just throw out and somebody has an idea and come in front of the council and make it happen. I mean, there is a distinct process. So for my business, I think 5 years from now, people will, I had a cruise line executive tell me this winter that the groups that get on the cruise ships that choose what they do during the town are down to 25% of them are actually using the facilities on the cruise ships. So 75% of the families, the groups that get on board those cruise ships are now making the decision what to do on their own. So that's, I mean, and that's a fact today. So 5 years from now, people are going to be exploring the towns, they're going to be doing this on their own, and a place that's got some continuity to its artwork, and this is just a advantage we have for my personal business. And I have a big investment, a big risk. I have 50 employees in the summertime. I've been in the cruise ship business since 1983, and so art is good for my business and obviously good for a lot of other people's business. As far as the process, I've been told that the process is secretive. I'm a businessman. You don't rule by committee. Some point, somebody has to take a lead, do the hard work, do the elbow grease. You have to have a group that's actually going to focus and is skilled in that and do that, and that's what I saw in KPAW. In other words, it was something that the artists locally supported. Now, how often do you get that? They talked good about it. They would show up to a meeting. If the KPAW called an artist and wanted to know about a particular medium, they got an answer for it. It was a group that worked together, and that's what I saw for 6 years. And in 6 years, they methodically produced those art pieces. And now they've got a piece that's controversial. You don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. That particular organization, in my mind, I was damn proud of it. Just proud of it because it's people I knew, and they were working together selflessly to bring art to town. And for them to get beat up over this is, in my humble opinion, is grossly unfair. It's just not fair. Even if they've chosen something from ours, it just doesn't make any difference. They've got 6 years of track record, and there should be a certain amount of respect for that. And I don't think you're going to find anything better. You're not going to see it. I don't see it between the city and the borough. I don't see that kind of working together. I don't see it in any department in the city or any department in the borough. These folks work together for the benefit of the town. So that's what I saw in 6 years. And then the piece itself, like I said, I started off, and I'm not an artist. I went to the Louvre with Terry Piles and was totally lost. I wanted to go down and eat popcorn because I didn't know what the hell he was talking about. But so I started off, what is this thing that's being put here? But instead of just turning around and saying it's not like we had, I sat down with Ray, I sat down with the artists in town, I says, what is this? What's it going to do? And then I went to their website. A lot of their work is featured in a famous kinetic museum in London, and I looked at that, I looked at the videos, and although it is not like the past, I can almost guarantee you, because I can't guarantee you, but my sense is that that is going to be one of the most photographed things that we have in this town. And Ed Cushing, who's in this room, is going to turn around at some point and say, that's so photographed, I'm going to put a webcam on it. And that's where people are going to gather, and they're going to call their homes and say, look at this thing. Here's where I'm at in Ketchikan, Alaska. There's a sign. That's what's going to happen. And that's what something that's unique and dynamic and will have a buzz about is going to happen. So whether we think it looks like the past, to me, is not as important as what it does for the future. We have lots of really quality artwork in old-time mediums from the past. This is different, but it will affect our tourist experience in a positive way. I am absolutely sure of that, and that's what turned me around to it. And plus, I think that in this town of Tinkers, I grew up with loggers and mechanics and aviation mechanics and stuff. This is going to be something that's discussed and talked about, and people are going to figure out how does it work, how to make it better. And looking at the resumes of the people that designed this particular piece, I think they'll figure it out. I think this town will figure it out, and whether somebody looks at it and goes, holy hell, what is that? Doesn't make a big difference to me. What makes a difference to me is it's different, it's interesting, and that our tourists it's going to add to this overall experience in Ketchikan. And that's what I think will happen, and that's not based out of just guessing. That's based out of 30 years of proposing things to cruise ship passengers and seeing what the feedback is and what they're looking for and stuff. So I don't know if that was 5 minutes, but thanks again for your time, especially you guys that allowed me to sneak into your office unannounced, and I'll come back in a year over something I'm all worried about.
Thanks, Chuck. Ray, Mr. Troll.
Ray Troll, I live at 627 Garden Street, but I guess it's now 612 Pine Street. Does the city change that? So I've heard a lot of people, so yeah, it's kind of weird to have you no longer live there. You live somewhere else. The numbers are different. But I've heard a lot of people say I'm not an artist. Well, I am an artist, so I want to give you the viewpoint from the artist, all right? I think I am an artist, but can I pass this around? Thanks. So this is from the artist, and I don't know if you've ever tried to organize artists, but it's kind of like taking chickens to the beach. So at the very last minute, I got a few more signatures on this, and I wrote them in. So rather than free spool like Chuck just did in a great way, and Dave, and anyways, thank you to all the speakers, all of you. I mean, pro or con, I think you can already agree that I think this is already a successful piece. I'm going to free spool for a minute because it has generated discussion. And people are engaged with the gauge, so I think that's great. So Mayor Williams and City Council, Ketchikan Public Art Works was formed by a group of townspeople and artists about 7 years ago to promote and support public art in our town. The group drew up guidelines to assure that a strongly representative cross-section from our island would be involved in the selection process. And I would urge any of you that are really opposed to this, any of you, if you feel like you've been excluded, talk to us. We're going to get a list. We want you in the next. I really do. We sincerely want you. We want this to be a public process. This is a public process. So, and we actually reached out to some of the most conservative, unlikely art people, in town to be on some of these committees. And actually, in this last committee came up with this. So I wasn't on that group. I didn't want to be anywhere near it, but they chose this. So I didn't look because I had a lot of friends that applied for this. We also agreed that we wanted the competition for public art to be opened up not only statewide, but also nationally and internationally. After all, many of us have been lucky enough to be awarded contracts for major artworks in distant cities around the world, and we're really proud to say that we're from Ketchikan. We have been welcomed warmly in those far-flung communities, and we felt it only fair to do likewise with artwork commissions for our tiny little town. We also know that we Ketchikaners can compete with the very best. I give talks on a regular basis, all across this nation, and I always start with a slideshow that says who I am and where I'm from, and I always talk about the very first thing I do is I say I'm from Ketchikan, this is what Ketchikan is all about, and the very first thing I'm always explaining, I'm free-spooling again, I'm straying from the script, but I always talk about the rain, and I've always dreamed of having something that measured the rain, that we could see, that we didn't have to wait till the end of the year to find, we could find out exactly what it was, we could watch it piling up. But as such, we are all in favor of the new rain gauge and the talented duo of Dutch artists, yes, they're Dutch, that have been chosen by the Citizens Selection Committee. We have reviewed their other works carefully. That means we've all looked at their websites and the artwork they do. And so as artists, as professional artists, we can feel confident that they will deliver a remarkable and professionally crafted piece of art that we can all be proud of. And I've signed all the names. I'll just spool them off here. Ray Troll, Yvonne Zerbitz, Terry Piles, Mary Hendrickson, Kathleen Weichelman, Dave Rubin, as you've heard from, Marilyn Lee, Linda Millard, Deb Turnbull, Victoria Lord, Aaron Reed, Chuck Slagle, some of them aren't artists. Well, Chuck's kind of an artist in his own way. Jeannie Blackmore, Stephen Jackson, Donnie Varnell, and Holly Knoyer. So I just want you to know that, those of us that make a living in the arts, that we're behind this. We bear note, we wanted this process. We wanted it international. So, thank you.
Thanks, Ray. Any questions for Ray? Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Bianca Jerzak, come on up.
Bianca Jerzak, 3087 Crest Avenue. Thank you, Mayor Williams and Council. This is my first time, except for I think back when skateboarding was outlawed on the sidewalks, that I've actually spoke, so a little informality here. My interest in the rain gauge is that I am one of the local artists that submitted, and I'm not against the gauge or the funding. I'm against the concept of getting a new gauge, and I hope that we can eventually come back to this issue. I work and I do a lot of contracts, particularly state-funded contracts, and this idea for me to actually submit for the first time, I did it not with the guys that I was going to get selected. I knew I wasn't going to. I wanted to see how the procedure went. I wanted to understand it better and know. And Kathleen Light, who's the head of the Arts Council, so graciously did so and is actually going to give me a narrative back on everything that the council, that the members said. I mean, she's going to go above and beyond. Unfortunately, I don't feel that this process meets most of the statutes of the state, which a lot of ours, Ketchikan's, the city, being a government entity, has to follow the statute of the state. But also reading through our charter and our municipal code, I see a lot of errors, and I don't think that the bid procedure was actually put out properly and was something of such a high value. I think is why the KPAW structure maybe didn't work so well, or why it's such a big thing. And also the fact that, yeah, we're going to have to say it, they're not from this country. That stings. That really hurts. I didn't expect my piece to get picked, but I didn't expect something that looked like that came from another country to be chosen over me. I live here. Every piece of art in this town is made by a local artist. Dave Rubin's statues, the Creek Street Salmon by Terry Piles, Ray Troll's buses. Why do we have to hire foreign people to represent us, our rain gauge? I want to know, and I mean this in the best, what happened? We can't just run off the back of art lives here into this. This is ridiculous. We just got this motto. It's an insult. It's a slap in the face. It really is. As an artist locally, and how much the Arts Council does locally, I just was there the last time for the last Artist Be in there, and they told me about what they really do and how it's all about teaching and developing. And I'll tell you what, I'm still doing it. I'm still learning a lot of stuff. And they really are great. The Arts Council, Kathleen, you girls, you really are great at helping people like me to get out there. And I think that the process, it was muddled. And I'm kind of got off key there, but I'm going to just give you some notes real quick on things that I really do find concerned in a more of a, kind of a legal way. But I want you guys to know, tax requirements, okay? How well does the city staff know the IRS withholding requirements for non-resident aliens, which is basically what I have to call the two gals from Dutch to be appropriate, or the artist. Do they know that artists may have to be considered employees for withholding and reporting purposes, not contractors, not just a basic contract? In fact, the appropriate tax treatment for any particular artist is extremely fact-specific, depending on the artist's country of residence, the amount of money earned by the artist in the U.S., and the artist's status as an individual or business for tax purposes. The IRS requires that anyone in the U.S. who is paying for services performed by a foreign artist has to withhold 30% of taxes. This isn't a standard 1099 to a subcontractor. They can't fill out a W-9. Let's see here. It's not going to be standard procedure. We're going to have to pay to research it. We're going to have to pay to understand the litigations. Where's the work going to be primarily performed? Is it going to be, some stuff's going to be done in their country. And if they decide that, their country may have it already that as an entity, we're going to have to comply to their tax laws because money's going to be going to them. Another thing, what about the money? How are we going to get it there? Normally, depending on a foreign, do you guys know how to do it? What's the policy with cash crossing the border, with mailing a check internationally and tracking it, or a wire transfer fund, and the fees that are going to be incurred, and for wire transfers and exchanging currency, the ramifications of that. Now, and specifically IRS forms, non-resident aliens, they require 1042, 1042S, 1042T, a W-8, a W-4, and an I-9, and a few others. All forms that I have never heard of. And I've spent 10 years doing very complicated payroll for all sorts of Davis-Bacon and Little Davis-Bacon and certified. And there's so much. I spent 6 hours reading and researching on this. And the sources I got was the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services website, and then another great website, artistsfromabroad.com, and those are both excellent, and they inform me of everything, and they base it off of, they give you IRS tax laws, and I suggest anyone research those sites because it really is helpful to understand what we're going to deal with here. Lastly, a visa. Okay, I'm not sure, I read through the proposal, I got online, I got the proposal that Kathleen gave to the council. I read the submission for the piece, and they didn't mention anything about, coming here, except for, having a visa or things like that, which is fine, they didn't have to. But I found out through the Artists from Abroad that regardless if they have a visa already, they can't come here with that. If they're going to come here to work, which means we're going to have to pay them money in our country, which is, comes to the whole IRS and the money being collected here, and we have a liability to do it. That means they're going to have to get a specific work visa. Now, they have to have a U.S. petitioner fill out the forms. They're subject to multiple sets of rules governing what can be done here. They have to have a certain type of work classification visa. So the U.S. petitioner could be us. Normally it would be the employer or the person who's the source of income, or they can have a U.S. agent represent as their source. Well, that U.S. agent also has, we are responsible for doing IRS tax contributions and recording them and withholding requirements for the agent as well as for the artists. If we don't do the petition, if we do fill out the petition for this work visa for 2 women, not just one, then we've got to, and this is exactly the process, the many steps involved in the visa petition process. Aliens seeking permission to work in the U.S. first obtain the USCIS approval, which is the United States Immigration Services, of a petition filled with one of 2 service centers. Obtaining petition approval takes time and planning. Okay, so the petitioner, say it was us, who can't be an alien, must select the appropriate non-immigrant classification, prepare the necessary forms, gather the required evidence, include a union consultation if needed. The petitioner must know which of the 2 USC Regional Services Centers to use, provide the correct filing fee, complete the forms properly, submit the correct numbers of copies, and file sufficiently far in advance of the required entry date to account for the processing times, visa application times, and unexpected, and so forth. So it's just, wow, my head is spinning from just this research that I've learned. There's a lot of requirements and obligations that are going to incur additional fees regardless. There's going to be 1 or 2, and I just don't think that we have the resources to just do further. We haven't. I want to make sure that we've considered those additional expenses and fees in hiring Dutch artists, along with the fact that the process I don't think was done correctly. I think that local preference should have applied, and I may be incorrect, but I went through most of my statutes, and if this doesn't get ceased, as soon as I get my letter of intent, which I checked with Ms. Suter today, has not been issued, as soon as I get my letter of intent, that's the first thing I'm going to do, is I'm going to bring out my appeal, because I don't think this was a proper process. And I think that's why, if we had followed what the state requires of state-funded projects, CPV fund or Parts and Harbor Fund, that we're going to find that we did it wrong. And that's going to be enough grounds right there. So I thank you for your time. I appreciate it, my long-winded talk.
Excuse me. Hey, we got a question?
No. So you submitted a piece of work for this?
Yes, I did.
What was your understanding of what the project was?
Well, I think easily. We wanted I read the specs, and I'm very fluent. I bid multiple projects. Those dock projects that are bid out of town supported my family. Our family did all of the berth improvements. I got the inside scoop. I got to get plans for the drawings for this job from West Construction, because our family did work there, so I got the real dimensions of everything that was going to be in place for the next rehabilitation. I knew that whole entire pole had to be covered up, and I made sure it was. And that was a pain. That added another $30,000 into my bid. My bid, even $96,000. Okay, bidder's preference 7% for the city, or if you go by state 5%. I make that. I'm not worried about getting into or qualifying, but I made sure and followed every single spec. I made sure that pole was covered up. I incorporated. I went out there physically and took my own pictures and found the overhang and the embankment. So, and that's, that's where I think that, procedure was not followed correctly, and I don't think that KPA necessarily has the knowledge or the authority, for that matter, to understand what is required when it comes to state-funded public contracts and procurement and award. Yeah. Anything else?
Looks good. Thank you very much. Glenn Thompson.
Good evening, Mayor.
Welcome.
Council members. Glenn Thompson, 626 Sunset Drive. I'm here as a private citizen and not a borough assemblyman. But I want to change gears just a little bit on you and suggest that you do not raise sales taxes. Sales taxes have an immediate effect on local commerce. There's a chance that there will be leakage down south when people try to buy stuff out of town rather than in town to avoid taxes. A lot of the vendors will wind up having to eat the increase because it's built into their prices and it's a competitive issue, or they simply pass that on to the people who can least afford it, and that's the folks at the lower economic status in our community. And also there's competition issues, especially with regards to the tour ship passengers. Juneau's already at 5%, and we're talking about going to 6.5%. And trust me, the citizen or the folks on the cruise ships know the difference in the sales taxes between the two communities. But all of those reasons will add up to potential of diminishing returns from actually increasing sales taxes. So I really request that you really reconsider raising the sales taxes, but I do want to offer some alternatives. One of the things you could do is raise the sales tax cap. Borough's already said they'd be willing to go to 2,000. I know that Juneau is at 5,000, so that's an option. Another thing you could do is re-examine the exemptions that we have. There's a lot of exemptions in our sales tax code that haven't been looked at in a long time, and that's something that could be done. Another thing we could do is we could take a look at user fees. One of the things that was brought up with the sales tax increase was the library. The library has no user fees. That's an option. We do that at the rec center and a lot of the other venues in town. There's fees to use them. Another thing you can do is you can defer non-emergency capital expenditures. And finally, you can reduce services. And I've heard that there's no fat left in the budget, and the cuts seem to have been dismissed out of hand. But again, only the cuts were looked at were those suggested by staff, and I question whether or not there's other cuts that you can make. One thing I would also suggest is if you're trying to cut budget, take a look at the 95% rule. The 95% rule assumes that every budget has some fluff in it, and so you adopt appropriations at 95% of the current year budget as adopted in the next year's budget, and then for any increase over that 95%, you have a specific amendment to the budget to do that. That allows you to enact only specific increases to that appropriation where they're absolutely necessary. You can debate on each one and vote on each one. And then finally, you do your capital expenditures last and only do what you can afford or what's a life or death emergency. And these steps take longer. They require a look at the whole picture. But at least the council will look at each area and expense in depth and take a look and not vote to cut those everything across the board by 5% unless it's absolutely necessary to do so. So in closing, I think that raising any sales tax should be your last resort, and we need to all live within our means, and I ask you not to raise the sales taxes.
Thank you, Glenn. Any questions for Glenn? Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
And next, James Kristovich. Jim, are you here? All right. Holly Knoyer.
So tempted to just be long-winded, but here we go. Mayor, council members, thank you so much for your time. And boy, do I mean that. I'm here in favor of the rain gauge. I've talked to, I teach school. I'm an art teacher at Ketchikan Charter School. I have kindergarten through 8th grade classroom, and all those kids come through my room. They're kind of interested in the rain gauge. Some of them thought it looked weird. I have to agree with them. It does look kind of weird. We love that it measures our rain. We have a lot of rain, as we all know. I want to say that as a local, it doesn't bother me that this project comes from out of state, that it comes from out of the nation, that it comes from somewhere else, because, and this is where I feel strongly, I am so proud to talk about this town to the kids that I teach. When I talk to my kindergartners, my second grade, first, second, all up to 8th grade, I get to talk to them about the uniqueness of this town, as you all know, because you're sitting here. You look out at Nathan Jackson's Eagle, for crying out loud. We drive through Saxton, the most beautiful tribal houses right here on this island, totems. The students that I work with every day just get, you see this little smug grin, this happy face when you say, Nathan Jackson's work is all over the world. And we don't just keep it here in Ketchikan for us. Sure, that's disappointing to Nathan, but all over the world. And they're so proud to know that we are represented everywhere. Our art is a big deal over in Europe. We have work from Dolores Churchill, Holly Churchill, Lee Wallace, Linda Schreck, Nathan Jackson, Stephen Jackson, Donnie Rennell. We know that we have world-class artists, and that we're so blessed to have that right here in this town. It's interesting to see things come from out of town. You don't know how that's going to inspire you. I think it's good for our kids to see that we reach out and see that interesting things come in here. I love the comments that Chuck made about tourism. I'm not crazy about tourism, folks. I live out there in Herring Cove where we have the Bear Bridge. You know what I'm talking about. 100 people standing on that Herring Cove Bridge looking at bears. Traffic slows to a stop. But what's going on? People love to come here. They love to see what we've got. And one of the things we have that's unique, you know it, is rain. And I think it's probably true that if that crazy-looking rain gauge shows up on the dock, I know I'm going to get my picture taken down there when it is raining cats and dogs, and you're thinking, surely we had 6 inches today. Well, no. You go down there and you look, it's blowing sideways. Maybe it's only an inch. Maybe it's 4. But you can actually see it, and I think the kids are going to enjoy that. So my main comment that I want to say to you is it's good to bring things from outside. Most of us came out from outside. I mean, I was born in Washington. I didn't come from here. I live here now. This is where my whole family is. I mean, really, the only people who are from here are Tlingit, Tsimshian, and Haida, right? So I love that that we can represent art from all over the world here. I love that we represent local art very well. And I think I'll try to wrap this up. I'll ramble if I don't watch myself. But, hey. I would like to say that I have been asked if I would work on that KPOC committee, and I said, no, I don't think I have time. Now, council members, you know what it's like to have time. They did put a lot of time in there. You're putting a lot of time in here. You haven't even gotten to your packets yet because we're still talking about the rain gauge and everything else. I do thank you for time. I know that a lot of work went into that. You saw the binder. It's really a binder full of public art and a lot of discussion. It makes me think that if I care about art that much, I need to start volunteering for those committees. But what I want to leave you with is I'm for it, even though I'm not crazy about it. I'm crazy about the fact that we're going to see how much rain we have. I hope if we fix our museum so the roof is safe, we can even save the other rain gauge and put it on display, because that's where I used to meet my friends when I was in 6th grade. We'd all go meet at the rain gauge. We can still find that rain gauge. So I'm just here in strong support, and I want you to know that the kindergartners think it's pretty cool too. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that brings us to Stephen Reeve.
Hi, Stephen Reeve, 5 Creek Street. I'm here representing Historic Ketchikan, and I'm here also to talk about art, but it's another piece of art, just a few steps down from the rain gauge. It's the now 110-year-old Yates Memorial Hospital, also known as Alaska Sportsman, the Chamber of Commerce, and the Siemens Center. Very important building in our history. Certainly our number one, all of us interested in historic preservation, and you've mentioned this before as a body, feel this is our number one priority. It's on your agenda a little bit later, and I just wanted to provide you all with a hard copy document of what I believe you received in electronic.
Thank you. Thank you.
As you know, a lot of us watched this building deteriorate for years, and a couple of years ago, Historic Ketchikan and St. John's Church came together and concluded that this was important to try to restore, and Historic Ketchikan decided to make a big commitment to doing so, very big commitment. We've spent now about $40,000 of our operational budget and our donated time as board and staff, and actually a lot of additional support from professionals in the community who also donated time. We focused on getting the building stabilized, safe to occupy, documenting the building's history, and all of that is in that report that you have before you, and then developing a plan for its future, understanding codes, understanding all aspects of development of that property. Group that you'll see mentioned in there worked with us. People like Welsh Whiteley, I paid tribute to. They helped us a lot. Brett Serlin, a structural engineer, Keith Nelson, electrical engineer, and others went through the property, documenting existing conditions, code and life safety issues, electrical, mechanical, structural, all the issues you face in a 110-year-old building that you want to restore. And this piece that I gave you tonight is really our blueprint for moving ahead with this property. And we also, the board asked me to express our appreciation to you for the CPV grant that helped us so much last year. That $20,000 has gone a long way to leverage a lot of other grant money, and we have grants coming in now, and we see a real active restoration process in front of us. We've appreciated the manager and his staff, and we also want to pay tribute to our short-termer building official. He has, Chuck Dearden has really worked with us to enable our occupancy of that building safely, and we really appreciate working with him. That's a key to the ultimate success of this building, is be there on site and pulling all the pieces together to make that a success. So I hope you enjoy reading through that. There's a lot of technical stuff in there, but there's a lot of good stuff about the history and what needs to happen to restore the building. And if you have any questions after you read that or now, I'm happy to answer.
Any questions for Stephen? Thank you, sir. Okay. Yvonne Zerbitz.
Hi there, Yvonne Zerbetz, 340 Gold, and I'm here representing KPA as an individual member and as a small businesswoman who happens to be all based on art. And there's so many good points and for and against the rain gauge, and we are so lucky to even have this public process. And that's really what it's all about tonight. It's not about the rain gauge, whether we like it or not. It's about the process. And as I've watched the discussion unfold, I'm standing in favor of continuing the public process as we've established for the selection of public art. And the controversy, I think, likely ensures that we're going to have a pretty cool piece that really engages curiosity and that word engagement, which is what public art is all about. And to illustrate, because I know you are all getting a lot of heat, I'd like just to bring witness to a very controversial public art piece. There was a national outrage in 1981 over the now very famous Vietnam Memorial. And in no way is this the Vietnam Memorial, but it was not a pleasant process, and it was very hard for people to see from just this conceptual sketch that that won the award, to see the final artwork. And so I just want to encourage everyone not to get too worried about this conceptual sketch now, but just to trust the process that the conceptual sketch is just one step in the process. And now we can just witness how powerful, a piece that the Vietnam Memorial is. And I think we won't be shedding tears at our rain gauge, but I think it will evoke a lot of curiosity. So I just want to encourage everyone to continue with the process. And thank you. And I do just want to add a note that we are a global world, and I'm working on a fairly large public art piece for the new State Museum, and I will be working on it in Germany. So we do have this flow of people coming into the community out, and we all work together, and it's pretty cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Hannah Schaefer, please.
Hi, Anna Schaefer, residing at 935 Forest Avenue, representing myself. I've just personally been very distressed by how divisive this issue of the rain gauge has been in our community. And I feel like people have reacted without having all of the facts, and reacted emotionally and compounded it by the way it's been distributed through social media. I urge you, the council and mayor, today to defer making final decisions about awarding contract or not until January, to give time for the public day that has been requested, and give a little bit more time for the public to have an opportunity to have their questions answered and concerns addressed. And that would be my request today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, that was everybody on the list. Is there anybody else here that would like to address the council tonight? Come on up, Lynn.
Good evening, Len Lawrence, 5716 South Tongass. Ketchikan rain gauge replacement. After the Welcome Arch on Mission Street, the rain gauge is one of the most photographed items in Ketchikan. People like to be photographed standing in front of the tall gauge, which clearly shows our rainfall to date. The gauge is updated on a regular basis. The present rain gauge is functional and a popular attraction with visitors. It has a dual role in that it helps screen the wastewater vent pipe, which is located on the north end of the new visitor center on the dock and adjacent to Dave Rubin's sculpture, The Rock. The proposed replacement is planned as an art piece with a series of linked clear acrylic vessels to record the rainfall. Some interpretation will be needed to tell how much rain has fallen. It will be difficult to read levels of rainfall in clear containers. Condensation will present an ongoing challenge. For a town honored as one of the top 100 art communities in the nation, it does not seem relevant to select European artists to grace our waterfront with their creation, even though they may be world-class artists. The $95,000 cost of the proposed art instrument seems high for something to serve such a simple function. Paying for this project with CPB funds makes it sound like free money. These funds could also be used to pay for other vital community projects. It is my recommendation that the council not approve funding for this project in favor of continuing to utilize the existing rain gauge until such time as a more cost-effective replacement emerges. Thank you.
Any questions for Len? Thank you, sir. Thank you. Anybody else that would like to address the council tonight? Seeing then, we'll move on. In our agenda, before we get going into consent agenda, since we do, Bob, and you guys put 4 hands up to put the termination of the pros rain gauge on the agenda, I'd like to add that to 7A, we'll call it 7A1 or 7-1A. So it's the first thing under new business. Any objections? Seeing none, that is now 7-1A. All right, let's bring this back to consent agenda. I have a couple items I was going to add to it. 6A1, 6A2, 7A4, 7A5, 7A6, and 7A7. And then under KPU, B1, 2, 4, and 6. Any objections? Hearing none, we'll make those. Go ahead. Take your time. I'll wait patiently. Has everybody got them marked? All right. We'll add those to the consent. Madam, do we have a motion to consent?
I move to consent.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, can you read the items, please?
Approval of minutes, regular meeting of November 21st, 2013. Liquor license granted ownership 49 Bar and Liquor Store. Ordinance number 131738, a new section entitled Change Directives. Ordinance number 131739, a new subsection I to section 3.12.043 of the Ketchikan Municipal Code. A budget transfer, Ketchikan Youth Initiative Skate Park. Various general government departmental budget transfers. Awarded contract number 1334 Hopkins Alley Structural Repairs, 3 Dog Construction, Inc. Resolution number 132533, amending the 2013 general government budget for the Port Department in the amount of $65,000. In lieu payment fee to the Southeast Alaska Trust for compensatory mitigation for the Whitman Lake Hydroelectric Project Phase 2, the Achilles Dam diversion. Budget transfers for the Telecommunications Division. Ordinance number 131740, a communication site power agreement between the city and AT&T Wireless Inc. First reading on ordinance number 131741, approving a sublease agreement between KPU and New Singular Wireless PCS Incorporated. First reading.
Bob, did you say you wanted to talk to one of them?
Yeah, a couple of them, and it's under the KPU 7B4, and that's ordinance number 131740, and it's in regards to communication site power agreement. And what I'd like to do is make sure that in our recommended motions and stuff, it has the actual costs associated. On 7B4, we're asking for $1,800 per month or $21,000 a year, which is for the AC power use on top of High Mountain, and I think that should be included. Also, on the 7B6, which is the use agreement for the tower and lands, that's a 5-year contract. That 5-year contract will cost $111,000 over the 5 years. And I think those figures should be reflected in the motion so that we know what the cost is relevant to these leases.
So be it.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else? Matt?
Yeah, I just want to look at the Hopkins Alley structural repairs, and we had budgeted $200,000. That was coming in below that. Just wanted to point that out.
Thank you,
for
sir.
half of the work.
Excellent. Call the roll, please.
Harris?
Aye.
Ziggy? Yes. Severson?
Yes.
West?
Yes.
Carlson? Yes. Olson?
Yes.
All right, that passes 6-0. That brings us down to unfinished business 6A3, which is adopting the budget, which we're not going to address tonight. We'll do that again starting Monday evening. It's 7 o'clock. Next thing is item 4, appointments to boards and commissions. I think we have a harbor board appointee, Anthony, let me find, Knudsen. Is there any objection? Hearing none, Anthony is now a Ports and Harbor Board member. That brings us down to 7A1, or 1A, excuse me.
Your Honor.
Go ahead, Bob.
I move to terminate the proposed rain gauge project that was approved by the City Council at regular meeting of November 7th, 2013, and release the funds back to the appropriate account.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Bob?
Your Honor, the city developed an RFP, and the request was very clear that the city wanted to encase the vent pipe where the present rain gauge is located now. The Art Council was paid to review and submit and bring forward to the council project fulfilling those needs. They took great liberties with the Art Council and the committee with the interpretation of that RFP, and as stated earlier by our proposer, they went by the RFP as the city wrote it, and that was very clear. They wanted that pipe encased. And to award this particular item, I think is unfair to the other 30-some artists that proposed, because it was well outside of the RFP's intent. If this was in the contract world, they would probably be listed as non-compliant. But the fact that when you submitted it, there would be appeal in regards that they weren't treated fairly, and I think that's the case here. Another issue is the project was proposed prior to the discovery of failed promenade. That is expected to be over $1 million to repair. The proposed funds can be better spent. The rain gauge is a want. It's not part of 1% for art or any of those types of things, and the city has more than its shares of needs at this time, so I think those monies can be better spent. I don't think the project does anything for heritage tourism, which we listed as a priority. It will not generate a single dollar on its own. And lastly, the amount of negative input that I've received on this project is overwhelming. I would ask my fellow council members who have heard the same negative support for this to vote in favor of terminating the project. And what would happen if we terminated this project? We wouldn't infuse $80,000 to $100,000 in Amsterdam's economy, and maybe we can figure out a way to spend that money here locally.
Anybody else want to address it? Deanne?
I just want to be very clear that I am not against art. I am not against the project. I think that the art that we have been blessed with in our community greatly enhances it. It's a novelty. I enjoy walking around and seeing different pieces because you look at it once and you see one thing and then you come back another time and you see something else, and it enhances our community greatly. And I am 100% for the art community and for the art processes that we have in this town. What I think we need to be very aware of is that, yes, there is a process, and they've all made it very clear that they support the process, as do I. You have to have something to work off of. But as Bob pointed out, based on the RFP specifications, I don't feel that process was adhered to. And if they want us to back the process and support the process, I think there has to be a consistency in what that is. And if it's not being supported in the RFP and their decisions, it makes it difficult for me to support it in terms of this particular project. But I just want to be very clear that I appreciate all the work that they have put into this project and all the other ones that we've benefited from. I look forward to seeing what comes about in our community in the future from the art community. I just don't want there to be any misunderstanding about what part of this I am for or am not for.
Marty, then Judy.
I'd like to offer a motion to postpone until January, voting on this issue. I think, I guess I should wait for it. Just a second.
Is there a second?
Postpone until January.
Moved in second.
I think emotions are very high now, and I think it would be appropriate to let the Arts Council have the meeting that they're talking about on the 12th, to have people come in and they can address those concerns. I think the timing was bad to have this during the same time we're doing the budget. They are separate issues, and I do think that we need time to let the Arts Council explain and let people explore the project, and they won't find it quite as horrifying as they seem to feel that it is now.
Anybody else? Bob?
Yeah, I kind of disagree. We've been pretty polarized over this, and I'd be remiss if I didn't thank KPOP for all what they've done. And again, I'm in full support of art, but I think this process and this project, especially being that they veered so far from the original RFP, is just going to cause us trouble. I don't think the city should or could award this without expecting to have some kind of a protest or appeal. I don't know what staff thinks, but that's kind of where I'm going with this. And again, as I stated, we have a failing infrastructure that I believe these funds could be directed towards. And I'm very conservative at $1 million. I don't know what the recent cost is. Steve maybe be able to update us on that. But if it was $1 million, this is 10% of those funds. We can spend our money better at this time. It's unfortunate, but that's the case that we're into. It's a want and a need situation. We want to re-engage, but we need to fix the problem.
Anybody else? Judy?
Well, I woke up this morning thinking that it would be a good idea to postpone it. I'm not going to lie. I attended the meeting with KJ, and we thought that it would be a good idea for the folks of the Art Council to have an opportunity to speak to me. Then I went to the office, and I'm not kidding, all day I was met with people are emotional about their rain gauge. This is an icon in our community. They're not the least bit happy about this. Perhaps if it would have been presented as a different piece of art, a standalone something for the dog, people might have felt differently. But people have ownership of that rain gauge, and they feel very strongly about it. So I have to take my emotion out of it. I respect all the people who put work into this. I've enjoyed the conversations. I think it's important that we continue the process. I would like to see a little bit more public input the next time around. But I have to look at the RFP when I make my decision. And when I look at that, the pole was not covered. That was part of the RFP. And so I'm
Matt?
Whether the pole or the post is covered or not is, I think, up for debate. You can hide something in plain view. You can hide something by putting a sheath over it, which is exactly what they've done here. We had proposals that went to hiding it up to 8 feet, and then it was completely open, to encasing it completely. I think that's a technicality and a splitting of hairs that probably wouldn't be counted. And that's just, it's unfortunate to me that what we're doing right now is we're grasping at a straw. I hate postponing. I absolutely hate it. Because I just think it pushes off things for usually for not very good reasons. But there's one aspect of this that I do support postponing it. And that is, for some reason, the public hasn't apparently felt that they've had any input on the art on this piece. They haven't, which must mean that they haven't felt like they've had any input on the autopsy replacement. They haven't had any input on the Dave Rubin's The Rock. Maybe not even any input on the stained glass that is up down along the promenade that is not made from a local artist. Maybe it would benefit us at this point to delay this so that the arts and humanities has a chance to showcase the art piece, but also showcase their selection process. My fear here is that if we just go ahead and say no, yes, I'm in favor of this piece. I think it's, not only do I think it's fantastic, I think it harkens back to exactly what early Ketchikan was and exactly what that part of early Ketchikan was with the sawmill and the fish processing plants that were all there. I think about all the industrial nature of that area originally, and it's just, to me, I think it's a beautiful piece. But I think we're going to lose the ability to sit and as a community have a conversation on this. And it might come out that in the end, people say, yeah, we want it after all. It might not. But I do agree with several of the statements and that we are a world sought after destination by people around the world. They come here to see our artwork, but they also see our artwork elsewhere, and I do think it's a good thing to do. But just in talking, I apologize, I'm getting a little rambling, but I think we should postpone this for the bigger aspect and the bigger picture of that. Whether or not in January we come back and we're in the same spot and the vote is yea or nay, I think we need to allow KPA, we need to allow the Arts and Humanities Council, and we need to allow our body to visit and meet together at that open meeting and share ideas and look at the process, and maybe we change the process at that time or after that time. But we need to have a discussion, and my fear is that when we come back to the next piece of artwork or public art that we do, we're going to have another issue, and we're going to have the same public outcry, and one of us is going to be up here splitting hairs, and I don't want to see that happen.
Bob, finish it.
I appreciate Matt's comments. I want to make it very clear that people that have talked to me, and there's been numerous, it's not about the process, they just don't pick the artwork. And I'm okay with that. I don't want to argue the artwork. But I think postponing this isn't going to do the community any good. And I think the fact that we are in a position where we're very potentially going to get, and I can see it, and I'm sure that Public Works Engineering has seen it in bids, if they allow something to stray that far, they're going to get appeals. It's going to happen. So I think it's best, and I'm not against working with KPA in the future to figure this out and bring a good project forward, whether it be this ring gauge thing or something else. I mean, I support the work that the Art Council does here. So, but I think that we need to terminate at this point and move forward.
Judy?
You know, I'm a strong supporter of the artists in our community. I've been approached overwhelmingly that people do not like this certification. I can't, in good conscience, vote. I just can't.
All right. Well, I know if everybody's.
There's a motion for postponement.
Oh.
Stick with that motion.
Oh, I'm sorry, I got more to say. I'd like to see this thing continue in the process, but I mean, I like it, but others have told me they don't. But it's one thing I just don't want to get into three vote, make me have to make a decision, which would be to defer. It says we're going to have a council member then that's going to decide at the new one where this is going to go. So, call the roll, please, to postpone.
West?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Carlson?
No.
Harris?
No.
Severson?
No.
Zingy? No.
Okay, the motion's on the table to terminate. Call the roll.
Severson?
Yes.
Zingy? Yes. Harris?
Yes.
Olson?
No.
West?
No.
Carlson?
Yes.
Motion passes, it's terminated. Thanks, everybody, for showing up.
Time for a break.
You bet, 5 minutes.
I want to get to the bathroom. I mean, gee.
All right, we're back in session. We're back in new business. So we just finished 1A. Let's go back to 7A1, bids for contract number 1329, burst 23, site enhancement, pool engineering. Do we have a motion, please?
Your Honor.
Go ahead.
I move the City Council accept the bid of Pool Engineering, Inc. in the amount of, where am I? There's a new one.
Is he here? No. Or is that a different one? Oh, sorry, it's a
That's
different
10A.
Okay.
I apologize.
In the amount of $164,991 for contract number 13-29, verse 2 and 3, site enhancements, establish a 3% contingency in the amount of $5,000, bringing the total project cost to $169,991. Authorize funding from the Port Department's 2013 Rain Canopy Capital Account, and direct the city manager to execute the contract on the documents on behalf of the City Council.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Bob, do you want to add anything?
No, I think we've got a good bid here, and we just need to move forward with it.
Anybody else? Call the roll.
Zingy. West.
Yes.
Harris.
Aye.
Severson.
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Carlson.
Yes.
Was that everybody? Yeah. Passes 6-0. Brings us down to 7A2, negotiations of contract 1330, management peer review relative to the assessment of the operation efficiencies and economies of the police department, law enforcement, accreditation consultants, Inc. Do we have a motion?
Your Honor, I move the City Council authorize the city manager to negotiate the terms and conditions of contract number 1330, management peer review relative to an assessment of the operating efficiencies and economies of the Police Department, Operations Division, E911 Central Communications Division, and Parking Enforcement Division, with law enforcement accreditation consultants of Pembroke Pines, Florida. Said agreement to be submitted to the City Council for formal consideration and approval.
Do we have a second? Second. Moved and seconded. Marty, you want to add anything?
I was part of the committee and the process worked well.
Oh, very good.
Your Honor.
You bet, Bob.
Since I have a son working for the police department, I'm going to abstain.
And 4?
Let me ask.
You bet.
I'm wondering if we can amend the motion and keep the canine position intact until this entity has a chance to do the review with all of the components that we have now currently.
Second.
That actually need to be done on Monday.
Yeah, let's do that at the budget.
Okay.
I don't have a question,
You bet.
and I mean nothing derogatory towards the council, but we're always putting out, we want some consultants to come in and tell us something. And it seems to me that a lot of that time, after we spend $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, all of their recommendations, majority of them go in a drawer, and we never make any move on it. And I can't support this one.
Well, let's do something different then.
Thank you, KJ. Anybody else, Matt?
Yeah, I haven't been in favor of this from the beginning, and I'm not in favor of it now. We have professionals in the police department who can look at this, and they can probably go out and get outside help from federal authorities to help them with some of this. I don't think we need to look internally and suggest changes. But we're going to do this $21,000 review, and odds are it's going to wind up costing us 10 times that with all the changes they're going to propose. We just talked about wants and needs, and this would be, I guess, the equivalent of a want at this point. I think it's just quite frankly, a waste of our money and time.
Anybody else? Call the roll.
Carlson.
Yes.
Harris.
No.
Olson.
No.
West.
Yes.
Severson.
Abstain.
Zingy. No.
It fails 2-3. That brings us down to 7A3, amendment number 1 to contract 1321, design services for phase 4 of the Berth 1 and 2 projects, P&D engineering. Do we have a motion?
Not me.
Your Honor.
Go ahead.
I move the City Council approve amendment number 1 to contract number 13-21, design services for phase 4 of the Berth 1 and 2 replacement project between the City of Ketchikan and PND Engineers Incorporated in the amount not to exceed $44,800, bringing the total contract amount to $194,500. Authorize funding from the Burst 1 and 2 replacement capital account and direct the city manager to execute the amendment on behalf of the city council.
Second.
Moved and second. Kay, do you want to say anything?
I don't have anything to say other than that we got to move forward with it, try to get the work done.
Steve, do you have a minute? I have a couple questions.
Steve Coper, I'm Port and Harbors Director.
And, you know, you guys had that meeting, as I was reading the document about the, with the industry and everything. And so why are we, what's the rationale for this RIAS thing changing, and how often, I mean, it's on the gray water discharge line, I mean, how often are we going to really need to use that?
Hopefully never, but as we found out this summer, if we do have to use it, it would be very, very nice to have it. They were running basically 3 Vector trucks round the clock for 3 or 4 days, trying to keep up with the gray water on the Millennium. The sewer line, that'd be the most logical place to put it. Extending RIAS float out is something we hopefully can use, not just in that situation, but there are some vessels, their gangways, doors for the floating docks will line up such that they can use RIAS float. We can have some gangways made to fit there if it's just a little bit wider. Right now it's just too narrow for that, but if we extend it out a few feet to the face of the dock, and that'll prevent them having to do gangway changes, which shuts down the ships, you know, people getting on and off for about 15 or 20 minutes every time they have to do that. And depending on the tides, that can be twice in a visit, a 5 or 6 hour visit. So that will be used hopefully quite often. But if we do have to stick a ship that's broken down at one of the berths, berth 3 was the best place to put it from a floating standpoint. No gangway changes. You don't have to worry about the stevedores or anybody having to do these gangway changes in the middle of the night. But running a sewer line down there would be kind of a pain. It's a real easy run at berth 2, and if we can get a gangway arrangement with a floating dock at the RIAS float, that way we could have that arrangement if we have a ship stuck here again as well.
Bob, did you have a question?
Yeah, similar to what you were talking about, Mayor, is the fact that I know this has happened once, and like you said, hopefully we'll never have to use it again. And so, you know, we still have to, I guess, take a look and see if our wastewater system would handle that input from those vessels on a steady or a surge type operation. I guess I'm not really anxious to jump right in and make a lot of changes based on that one incident. So I don't know if it's appropriate to go ahead and do the engineering so we know what the cost may be to do that. But again, I don't think I want to jump right into construction.
I was planning on putting some of these major items in Phase 4 as kind of bid alternates, especially since this is the last of the funding we have for this project. So I want to use as much of it as I can and not have to return any to the state. So I was planning on using bid alternates for several items so that we can basically kind of spend out. So that this is one of those items that we would do it that way.
Anybody else? Matt?
I have similar concerns that Lou and Bob, but I also have a memory or a recollection of a discussion about RIAS float and the need to keep it separate from the cruise ship docks. There was something about legality of how it came to us, and would that put that in jeopardy? Or
RIAS float is actually a harbor asset, not a port asset, so that's where that part comes from. It would not change the use of RIAS float when cruise ships are not there. It's still a harbor asset. Will be charged as a harbor asset. But if a cruise ship is blocking RIAS float, it's going to block it whether it's 8 feet wide or 12 feet wide when it's there. This would just make it more flexible when cruise ships are there.
Thank you. All right. Seeing no one else, call the roll, please. Thanks, Steve.
Yes, sir.
Severson?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Carlson?
Yes.
Zingy?
Yes.
Harris?
Aye.
West?
Yes.
Okay, that passes 6-0. That brings us down to 7A8, change order number 1, contract 1308, phase 3 of verse 1 and 2, rehabilitation project. Do we have a motion?
Your Honor.
Yes.
I move the City Council approve change order number 1 in the amount of $239,543 to contract number 13-08, Phase 3 of the Berth 1 and 2 Rehabilitation Project between the City and Orion Marine Contractors, authorizing funding from the Port Department 2013 Phase 3 and Berth 1 and 2 Rehabilitation Capital Account, and direct the City Manager to execute change order on behalf of the City of Ketchikan.
Do we have a second? Moved and seconded. Anything you want to add, Bob?
No. I think that was overlaid to be pretty cool.
10-4, and yeah, we did. That was good moving it up. Go ahead, Matt.
I just, what were the comments and the reasons for getting rid of the cantilevered rain canopy again?
Port and Harbors Director Steve Copron. We really didn't need them there from an operational standpoint, but I knew that if we were ever going to want something there, it would be much more cost-effective to do it in Phase 3, get the structural stuff in. In talking with the Historic Ketchikan folks, especially at the meeting we had up at the Civic Center, they really didn't care for that style. We kind of need that style if we're going to keep the traffic flowing through there, the pedestrian traffic flowing through there. But as the master plan for the promenade, as it goes through that area, is still kind of under development, we realize we don't need them there right now. What the plan is to leave the structural things are already being put in. We're not going to change that, and we'll just plug the holes. That way, no matter what kind of structure we end up putting in there, whether it's a covered structure or whether it might just be some kind of a bench barricade, we'll just use those slots to put them in. But most people at the meeting, they really didn't care for that style right down there like that, and I wasn't bent on having them. We were just kind of using them, you know. I just knew if we wanted to put something in, now be the time to do it. And this actually does both, without actually putting the structures down there. At least we know we can put something down there.
So at this point, it's just an aesthetic, and we're trying to figure out what we want, or if we want.
Yeah, we know. I know. I've always said Phase 4 we're going to be done, but we know that the promenade, you know, end to end, Berth 4 to Berth 1 is not going to be done. So there's no sense trying to force some stuff into Phase 4 that maybe isn't going to be consistent with what is eventually decided on in this waterfront promenade project overall. So this will leave some flexibility in there without the problem of trying to bust through the precast concrete panels. It's really difficult to do a good job and get good structural work done if you're trying to drill a hole in a precast concrete panel. You can usually go through one strand and not lose your integrity. 2 strands or 3 strands, you're really losing the integrity of the panel.
Any other questions for Steve? Seeing none? Thanks, Steve, again.
Yes, sir.
Call the roll.
West?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Carlson?
Yes.
Harris?
Okay.
Severson?
Yes.
Zingy?
That passes 6-0. That brings us down to 7A9, declaration of a public emergency, Centennial Building roof repair. We have a motion.
Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Pursuant to paragraph 7 of section 312.050A of the Ketchikan Municipal Code, I move the City Council declare the repairs of the Centennial Building roof as a public emergency, award a contract for repairs to Coogan Construction in an amount not to exceed $27,265. Approve funding from the Museum Department's 2013 Centennial Building roof repair capital account, and authorize the City Manager to execute the contract documents on behalf of the City Council.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Marty?
Matt and I went yesterday to a presentation and a tour of the museum, and this is a very necessary project. It looks like a forest is growing up there. It's terrible.
Anybody else? Go ahead, Matt.
I fear this just might be the very, actually, I think this is the very beginning of a long and depressing future for this building unless we begin to really look seriously at its future, whether it's going to be with the city or through private hands, or we just dispose of it. The building is having some, not structural issues, but some issues, and they're only going to get worse unless we start taking care of them. And I'm going to vote for this because it's going to keep the building drier. But we need to decide in the next year or two what we're going to do with this building so we don't wind up spending several million and then just throwing it out.
Yeah.
I have a question regarding the inability to find any local contractor that would be capable of doing the job. And I was just wanting to know what that process was in determining that there was no local contractor available.
Good evening. Cliff Allen, Public Works Director, City Engineer. The task was taken up by one of my senior engineering techs to find someone. It's a specialized type of product. They do need to be certified to deal with, it's either EPDM or EDPM, I always get it backwards, this type of roof. It's a specialty contractor. Most of these roofs that we see done in Ketchikan or even worked on are done by out-of-town contractors. There are a few guys like Andy who may or may not be certified. He's gone for the season down south. We don't want to wait until summer to tackle this thing. Coogan is in town working on some other roofs. He has available material. There's enough for this. But the general nature of the roofing is a specialty item.
I guess I just have some concerns when you make a blanket statement that there's no one available.
Matt, can you join me? I think he scoured every contractor we could come up with in town here, and especially to get 3 competing quotes. You know, we talked to other guys in Sitka. Like I did it. This is Matt Brown, our senior engineering tech.
Hi, Matt Brown, engineering technician. Basically, it is a specialized product. It's a membrane roof. There was one other contractor, Aurora Roofing. They used to install roofs like this. They're no longer in business or interested in looking at the project. Like Cliff alluded to, we do have the contractor in town. Materials are available. So yes, we are using the word emergency at this point and basically have a contractor lined up ready to do the project in a timely fashion.
Any other questions? Thank you, gentlemen. Call the roll.
Severson?
Yes.
Zingy?
Yes.
Harris?
Aye.
Olson?
Yes.
West?
Yes.
Carlson?
Yes.
And that passes 6-0, brings us down to 7-10. Budget transfer, Centennial Building lighting replacement. Do we have a motion?
Your Honor.
Go ahead.
I move the City Council accept the quote of Island Electric in the amount of $15,954 for replacement of wiring and light fixtures at the Centennial Building. Establish a 10% contingency in the amount of $1,595, bringing the total project cost to $17,549. Authorize a budget transfer of $17,549 from the Museum Department's 2013 Centennial Building Roof Repair Capital Account to the Centennial Building Lighting Replacement Capital Account. Approve funding from the Museum Department's 2013 Centennial Building Lighting Replacement Capital Account and direct the city manager to execute the contract documents on behalf of the City Council.
We have a substitute motion here.
Oh, we do? Oh.
Sorry.
Why didn't you stop?
Oh, I didn't want you stopping in the middle. It's so good. You read gooder than me.
Go ahead.
I move the City Council accept the quote of Island Electric in the amount of $22,454 for replacement of wiring, light fixtures, and the installation of 48 lineal feet of track lighting at the Centennial Building. Establish a 10% contingency in the amount of $2,245, bringing the total project cost to $24,699. Authorize a budget transfer of $24,699 from the Museum Department's 2013 Centennial Building Roof Repair Capital Account to the Centennial Building's Lighting Replacement Capital Account. Approve funding from the Museum Department's 2013 Centennial Building Lighting Replacement Capital Account and direct the city manager to execute the contract documents on behalf of the City Council.
Second.
Who didn't second it? Marty?
Again, like the roof that when Matt and I were at that meeting yesterday, the lights are sparking and they're causing little fires. This needs to get done yesterday.
Bob?
Carl, could you explain the addition of the track lighting?
Mayor, I'm going to defer to Cliff and Lacey if they'd like to come up and explain the rationale for that.
You can talk from back here.
Seems familiar. Cliff Allen again, Public Works Director. Ironically, when these quotes were being sought a few weeks ago, the electric was the one we were going to declare an emergency. As it turned out, Matt was readily able to get 3 competing competitive quotes. At that time, I did not have a funding source, and they were also seeking spotlights, track lighting in there to better utilize the, what's that area?
The auxiliary gallery. It's a small exhibit space that's just to the left of the lobby where the informer circulation desk for the library was located.
That said, I blew it off at that time in no uncertain terms. I know this is an emergency. We can't throw anything on top of it like a pork project. Since that time, we did find a funding source for the lighting. It's the excess money in the CIP for the roofing, which is now much less than the 65 intended. We have adequate funding. We have competitive quotes. It's an obvious one that I really have to agree with.
Thank you.
I might add, it's also a permanent type of upgrade. It's not one that we will lose with re-roofing or with renovation.
Any other questions?
One question.
Yes.
And you probably can't answer it because you don't work for these companies. But so we got these 3 bids in here, and 2 of them are within $100, or 115, 120, not including the track lighting that we were talking about. And then we got this last bid that we accepted is like $10,000 less. Now you include the track lighting, it's not quite as much less. It just seems like a big variance between the top bid, the middle bid, which is damn near the same bid.
I can't answer that. They come in all different forms. When they're quotes, we don't get as technical about filling in specific line items. One of those bids, and I can't even tell you which one, for the $25,000 did include track lighting. In that $25,000, the other one did not include track lighting. So if you add in $3,000 or $4,000, there's actually a spread of $4,000 or $5,000. It raised my eyebrow too at first glance.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Call the roll.
Thingy? Yes. West?
Yes.
Harris?
Okay.
Severson?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Carlson?
Yes.
All right, that passes 6-0. That brings us to 7-11 with discussion of council members retaining their iPad after giving up the job. Bob?
Yeah, we've discussed this a little bit in the past, and I called Katie, and we recently had an election, and news come on and polls go off. And these iPads are a very useful tool, and that's what they are, and we use them for related appointments and committees, such as, for me, the Hospital Foundation, the CEPA business, LECP type stuff, rate studies, and all that kind of stuff. And I just think that, for me, it'd be an advantage if I did choose not to run or move along to keep that, because I'm still going to be involved at some point. And I just want to make sure that there's a way that we can do that in regards to correct ordinances and compensation and all that kind of stuff. And after 3 years and sometimes 4 years and maybe even 5 years, these things are going to be different than they are today.
Thank you, Bob. Anybody else? Matt?
I wasn't for this in the beginning. I'm still not for it. I think 3 years of service and getting something that costs around $400 is a little extravagant when I think we give people after 30 years a watch or a pin or a very parting gift. So we're the only employee of the city, and we are employees of the city that get to keep something like this. And just wanted to say that.
Dan?
Honestly, after about a year and a half, they're obsolete anyway. I think that depreciates the value to some extent with all the newer and different technology that's coming out. I don't really have a thought one way or the other on it, but I just know that the technology and stuff changes so fast anymore that I'll be curious to see how these particular tools are sustained over the next several years.
Anybody else? Yes, KJ.
Well, I don't see anybody at the end of my term wanting my iPad. I mean, to use it, because you can't plug in your computer to it. You can't do it. We don't have any of the hoo-haws that go with this thing. Personally, I don't care one way or the other. The last thing I want to do is make it look like any of us council members are taking advantage of the city and getting something that we don't deserve.
Anybody else? Oh, Bob and then Marty.
Even if we could figure out a way to pay it out of the portion we get, or however that works, and I know that there's some things in ordinance that we'd have to check as far as compensation or buying city property. And that's all I want to do is check into it and see if there's a plausible way to do that. I'm not expecting, I guess, something for nothing, but after a period of time and fair market value, or however we want to work that out, it might be appropriate to do that.
Marty?
I think after 3 years, they're probably pretty obsolete, and I don't have any problem with letting council members keep them when they're done.
Anybody else?
I'm just hoping after 3 years I've figured out how to use it.
I was going to say, it might take that long to figure it out.
They're so, I just use mine for the agenda, and it's so, it's such a simple thing to do, and I could see us using these for a while, so I guess I tend more like Matt to just pass them on and keep using them just as for agendas.
The question is, can we use Katie after we're gone? Because I'm always going to her office saying, fix it. So.
Call the roll. Do we? Yeah, we have.
No, there's not much. I just like to check into it and get some input back.
What's the direction of the council? Do you have an objection with just looking into it?
No.
Carl, you got some direction?
Mr. Mayor, I'll be turning it over to the city attorney and the city clerk.
Sounds. Katie, thank you. Oh, here comes Ms.
City attorney is having an objection to this, I believe.
Oh.
I think we've already looked into it,
Yeah.
and the relevant considerations are in your packet. The one being that if the elected officials were going to buy property, it would first of all have to be surplus. If it's less than $500, it would have to be offered to the public on the same terms. If it's worth more than $500, there would have to be a public formal competitive bid process, because it starts out as city property. The clerk then asked me if there was some way to make it part of, and I think her term was a council hiring package. I took that to mean that could it be made part of the council's compensation. Compensation is set by ordinance. You can change that compensation under the charter to be effective. Change would be effective following the next regular city election.
So if somebody wants to go there, get it on an agenda. Otherwise, we'll just keep the same policy, and we can vote on it and see what you guys want to do.
I'd ask if there was 4 hands to have them look at the ordinance and maybe draft an alternative to make it part.
Do we have 4 hands? 1, 2. Nope.
They really care.
Yeah.
All right, that brings us down to 7B KPU. Number 3, budget transfer, 4G LTE project and construction management services, Alpine Power and Technology. Do we have a motion for managing our project?
Your Honor.
Go ahead. You're doing a great job.
Pursuant to Section 312.051B2 of the Ketchikan Municipal Code, I move the City Council authorize the General Manager to enter into a professional services agreement with Alpine Tower and Technology at a cost not to exceed $63,250 for project and construction management services for the build-out of the 4G LTE mobile project, and approve a budget transfer of $63,250 from the Telecommunications Division 2013 Salaries and Wages Account, account number 500-01, to the 4G mobile capital account.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. You want to add anything?
No.
Anybody else?
Can I ask a question?
You bet.
One of the questions is, do these type of needs go out for a bidding process at all? Or are they just, I know sometimes our platforms or software or technology, whatever, are proprietary and that no other company can plug into it, or so we always have to buy things continually from that same vendor. But I'm just not sure if this is one of them. And then my second question is, if someone could explain to me the transfer from the salaries and wages account, because this to me looks more like a software kind of an expenditure, so I'm not sure why that correlates to salaries. And if so, do we have an abundance of money left in salaries that we should be doing something else with?
Both good questions. Ed Cushing, Division Manager, KPU Telecommunications. Regarding your first question, you're absolutely correct. Generally, contracts of this type, if they're for more than $50,000 and or if they were proposing to sole source them, would come to council. In the case of this project, early in 2013, the council passed an ordinance authorizing the division to sole source any number of activities, including this type of activity, as opposed to needing to go to a competitive bid type of situation. So that's what we have been doing. In the case of this contractor, we've already utilized them for about $40,000 worth of services year to date. And now we have additional work we need them to do, which would take us over $50,000. So the need to go to bid doesn't apply, but because we're exceeding $50,000, it is appropriate and I believe necessary that we bring that to council for approval. As it relates to the transfer of funding out of salaries and wages into the 4G capital project, that is unusual. I think it's the first time I'm aware we've done that. The reason we're doing it is because we initially anticipated using a combination of contract labor or professional services, as well as internal forced labor, employee services to project manage this very long, extensive, complex project. We initially attempted to utilize, and we did promote an internal employee to help with the project management of this project, and it failed. The effort failed, unfortunately. In fact, the employee is no longer with us. In the meantime, we're on a very tight timeline relative to the project management of this project. We need to continue to use outside forced labor. We haven't been able to recruit someone externally to become an employee to do the internal project management. And so to us, it's appropriate and necessary to go into the payroll budget and move the funding that we were going to use for an internal employee to do this work to pay the external contractor.
Any other questions, Dan? Anybody else? Don't run away, Ed. There's another. Okay. Think on. Call the roll, please.
Severson?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Carlson?
Yes.
Zingy?
Yes.
Harris?
Aye.
West?
Yes.
That passes 6-0. That brings us down to item 6, budget transfer, purchase of microwave radio antennae, waveguide, and related equipment. Do we have a motion? Go ahead, Marty.
Is this 4?
No, but yeah, this is 5.
5, oh, okay.
I got it if you want, Marty.
Yeah, have that.
Pursuant to section 3.12.051B and 2 of the Ketchikan Municipal Code, I move the City Council to accept the proposal of Gray Bar for the procurement of the microwave antenna, waveguide, and related equipment at a cost not to exceed $90,405.23. Establish a 10% contingent amount of $9,000 and bring the total procurement cost to $99,405.23. Authorizing the budget transfer of $40,000 from the Telecommunication Division 2013 rents and lease infrastructure account number 64504, and a microwave link to Prince Rupert capital account, approve funding from the Telecommunications Division 2013 microwave link Prince Rupert capital account, and direct the general manager to execute the contract documents on behalf of the City Council.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Bob, any questions?
I understand, and there was some comments made about sole sourcing and things like that. And early on in this process, we exempted the telecommunications and moving forward with 4G Lite and this type of stuff from that. But they are doing their due diligence, I understand, and going out and getting multiple quotes. And in this particular case, they only had 2. Is that right? 2 that
Correct.
Responded, and Gray Bar was the best out of that.
Yes, that's correct. We submitted bids from 5 various suppliers.
Anybody else have any questions for Ed or anything? Call the roll.
Harris?
Aye.
Zingy?
Thanks, Ed.
Severson?
Yes.
West?
Yes.
Carlson?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Okay, that passes 6-0. That brings us down to item number 6, ordinance 1341, approving sublease agreement between Ketchikan Public Utility and New Singular Wireless PCS. Oh, I'm sorry. We already consented that. I'm sorry. That brings us down to vouchers for the Ketchikan Daily News, $353.90, and for Southeast Alaska Professional Services, LLC, Judy, $65.
Your Honor,
Go ahead.
I move for approval of vouchers in the amount, to Ketchikan Daily News, in the amount of $353.90, and Southeast Alaska Professional Services, LLC, at $65.
Moved and seconded. Call the roll.
West,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Severson,
Yes.
Zingy.
All right, that passes 5-0. That brings us down to manager's report. Do you have anything to report? Add, Carl?
Nothing this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Anybody have any questions on any of the items?
Your Honor?
Yes.
I know that we have some minutes down in here in regards to the guard shack, and, you know, the project's going on in the port. Steve, are we having any problem with the foundation down there? I had rumors that you had a little bit of issues going on. Is there anything major?
Port and Harbors Director Steve Copron. There's a little bit of spalling, especially at the entrance on the south end there. They think some moisture got in behind it. So when we get closer to the end, they're going to probably hammer that out, put some moisture barrier in there, and have to just grout in those corners.
Moisture coming from the bottom up?
Maybe leaking under the slab just a little bit there. We've looked at it. Right now with the temperature, you can't really do much about it right now. And the guys they have working on that are off for a couple of weeks. You know, they had hoped to be done by Thanksgiving. They didn't, but, you know, they've only got a couple weeks of work left, you know, if that, to finish it up.
I just heard rumors and I didn't know what it resulted in.
There's a little bit of an issue, but it's, yeah, it'll be taken care of.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Carl, thanks for the cruise ship calendar already. And thanks for the 4G cost stuff. So. Anybody have anything else? City clerk's file?
Nothing, Your Honor.
City attorney? Future agenda items? Mayor and council comments? KJ?
Seems like our whole crowd left.
Yeah,
I
got
just
up.
want to remind everybody, both here and that's on TV, this job is just a kick in the butt. No matter what happened, you got to figure 30 of them people that left are pissed at us now because we didn't make the decision they wanted. And I just want to remind everybody, there's nothing personal about what we're coming up with. I mean, we all talk to each other and to our constituents as much as possible, and we make, I believe, the best decisions that we can. We don't all agree. But sometimes this job is a pain in the ass, pardon my French. That's enough.
Thank you, sir. Bob?
Yeah, I want to echo what KJ said. There's nothing personal in this, and I had a problem, I guess, with the process and the results of how far we strayed from the RFP, and I was genuinely concerned about appeals and other issues. And given the selection and how it went about, I felt in my mind that the best way was to cancel it. At a later date, we'll come back and review the process and make it work better for everybody. And sorry that we couldn't move forward on it, but I voted my conscience again.
Thank you, Bob. Marty?
I'm sorry that we didn't give the Arts Council an opportunity to allow the public to come and take a better look at the project. And I think it might have allayed some of the fears had we done that. I think that was something we could have easily done, and I'm sorry that we didn't do it.
Thank you, Marty. Matt?
I'm actually concerned that we started looking at the RFP this late. We started really trying to micro-manage it and try to find any fault with it, and I'm really concerned about what happens the next time we have a construction RFP goes out and someone comes in and throws a what-if at us. What are we going to do? Are we going to sit there and stop the process and delay the construction RFP? just because there might potentially, possibly, maybe a 1 in 1 million chance that we're going to get somebody complaining about it. And on another note, K-High Debate Tournament, K-High Debate Team sponsors their debate tournament on next weekend. They're always looking for timers, judges, people just to come up and watch. You can come watch the finals at 6 o'clock. It is a lot of fun and highlights, quite frankly, majority of these people go on to do good works in public service later on in life. Thanks.
You bet. Yeah.
I just wanted to make a comment about the budget process. You know, we get a lot of feedback and comments from people about they don't want to see a tax increase, or, you know, that we're not being diligent about how we spend our money. And I just want it to be really clear that, you know, there's always a give and take. And no one's ever going to be 100% happy. I mean, someone's always going to be on the other side of the coin. But it really comes down to we either find additional revenue in some way that is equitable, or we cut things from the budget that could be employees or services or repairs to infrastructure. And I'm just always trying to figure out which of those would people rather have, which makes more sense long-term for our community. And it's a very difficult job to try to balance that in some manner. So I don't take having to consider an increase in a sales tax or potentially a property tax or any kind of increase in expenditures lightly by any stretch of the imagination. But there has to be some give and take in the process, and I don't think anything is just clear-cut, one-sided. There's a lot more depth and whatnot to each consideration than I think most people are really aware of. And as KJ so eloquently said, it's difficult, it's hard. So I just hope people will be understanding of that and certainly come to us and give us insight and feedback and comments, because that definitely helps. But more importantly, help us find solutions. And the one gentleman that came earlier, Mr. Thompson, I was actually very happy to hear someone actually not just tell us about a problem or tell us that we were doing something incorrectly, but to actually throw out some items for consideration. That was refreshing.
All right. Judy?
Well, a couple of things. One, I want to correct a mistake of our last meeting. I voted to restore membership in the Greater Ketchikan Chamber of Commerce, and I am the president. Just so you all know, I personally will not receive a dime of that money, and I'm only the president till the end of this year. And I'm also on, as I was appointed by the mayor, to the Ketchikan Visitors Bureau, Ports and Harbors Board, and Community Grant Committee. And after speaking with the city attorney, he told me that I should mention those things. So I just want to correct you. Trust me when I tell you that will not happen again. And also, about the rain gauge, I believe that we did the right thing. And not because so many people visited me about this rain gauge, and it was twofold. I mean, people are emotionally attached to that rain gauge, and also concerned about spending that amount of money. When we visited, I thought the right thing to do would have been to give the public an opportunity to comment. But I just think it would have made the wounds deeper. And I think we just had to and look to something in the future.
Thank you very much. Well, I was enjoying being called Mayor Rain Gauge. I don't know if they meant it in a good way or a bad way. I got plenty of comments. I was thinking, I had another friend call me today and saying that rain gauge doesn't make it, maybe putting a giant extra tough boot to cover it. I thought that was a great idea. And he said you could even make a rain gauge at the bottom if you wanted. I thought that was a great idea. Judy, thank you for making those comments. I made that note down there. There is things going on also. This weekend is the Nutcracker, the ballet. It's going to be Friday, and I think Saturday at 2. And then if you're into basketball, it's Meet the Kings, I believe, Saturday night at 7. Girls and boys basketball teams are going to be doing stuff up there, so you can get know who's on the team this year. And Art Walk, Friday. Hit the streets. Remember, next week we have a budget meeting on Monday, Wednesday, and if we need another one, we got one for Thursday.
I will be out of town Wednesday and Thursday.
Okay. Anybody else out of town? Anything? Okay. And then Monday, first thing in the meeting, it's on the agenda. It'll be down at the bottom, but I'll ask you guys on Monday if we can move it to the top to get our council members seated. So we'll go through that process and do that first. Anything else? Thank you. Oh, do we have a move?
To adjourn.
Move to adjourn. Thank you.
You don't need us for that, Liv.